As a parent, the most important thing we want for our children is for them to be happy. But what do you do if your child is having changes and they are dealing with bullying? It could be a space as a parent where it makes you feel helpless. So let's talk about ways that we can know our child is being bullied and how we can support them. My name is Crystal Turner, and I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner who has gone holistic because I know to be whole is to be healed. And this video is dedicated to your beautiful child who you want to support in the midst of some changes that can be concerning. In my last video, I talked about bullying and the impact that bullying can have as an adult after you've dealt with that in your childhood. But I want to give some aspects to consider when we want to prevent our children from having to go through those types of tumultuous times that can last throughout the course of their life. So let's talk about what you may see in your child when they are experiencing bullying. The first thing I would say are changes. In a general sense, paying attention to changes that might overcome your child, that catch your attention. And it requires us to pay attention to our children in this day and age where there are so many distractions. It is important for us to have still a primary need to focus on our children to see if they have any needs that they're not speaking about. Most children, when they're dealing with some type of abuse or trauma, they don't necessarily come straight out and say it because there can be so many psychological things that they're thinking. There can be so much with that. You know, one of the big things could be embarrassment. And even though you're a parent and you love your child, that embarrassment can really stick to the degree that it's hard to tell anyone what you're experiencing. So keeping in mind that what is really important is to pay attention to the changes that you see in your child. And the first change I'm going to say are emotional changes that you may see. If you have a child who's been very happy, positive, outgoing, and then they become more introverted or withdrawn, it's something to pay attention to. Some children, they can become more nervous, more apprehensive. And then there could be children who are experiencing more anger. Anger is a very common sign of depression in teenagers and in young people. You know, sadness is a thing too, but if your child is suddenly becoming angry and having angry outbursts and not happy, it's really something to think about and consider what could be going on in your child in that way. So changes in their emotional state is definitely something to pay attention to. You know, our emotions are always expressing themselves. What we don't say, we tend to express it. So pay attention to how they are in that way. I would also say changes in their eating habits. For some people, we can stress eat. And definitely if someone is experiencing bullying, if your child is experiencing bullying, this is definitely stressful. And for some people, to stress eat means you increase eating your junk foods or just increase eating food altogether. There are some people, however, I'm one of those people that when I am stressed, I lose my appetite. So you also want to pay attention to if your child suddenly is not eating and understanding what's going on, especially if they've had a pretty healthy appetite before. You want to pay attention to those types of changes. And then also changes in sleep habits. So this really aligns with someone who is dealing with depression. A lot of things that you can see in someone who's dealing with that, you can see in these same ways. So someone whose eating habits their sleeping habits are changing. And it could be on either side. It could be someone who begins to sleep too much and doesn't seem like they want to be bothered and they're withdrawn. It could also be someone who is not sleeping as much because they're anxious, especially if the next day is a school day and they're up. They could be worrying about what the experience for the next day is going to be, and it can really cause a change in their sleep cycles. So those are three changing dynamics or areas for you to look at in your child and for causes of concern or something for you to start exploring what could be going on. I've mentioned before that I dealt with bullying as a young girl, and I remember every morning on a school day, I would get up. The first thing I wanted to do was get up and start getting ready for school, but I would get up and I would begin to get ready for school, and I would be doing fine. And then there was a cartoon that would come on every morning. Depending on how old you are, you might not be familiar with this cartoon, but I believe it was called Rocky and Bullwinkle Show. And every time that show came on, my body responded. I started getting these butterflies in my stomach. My palms started sweating as I would sit there and watch part of the cartoon. When the Rocky and Bullwinkle Show would come on, 15 minutes after it came on, it would be time to leave out and walk to school. But I remember distinctly every morning when I was sitting there, when it came on, my stomach would start hurting. I would get butterflies in my stomach and my palms would start sweating. And I really think that there could have been some outward signs that could have been picked up on that showed that I was nervous the way I felt. And so what I really want to say in relationship to that is paying attention to body language, especially before your child is going to school that morning of school. Or are they trying to avoid going to school? Thinking about a child's avoidance behaviors. So for me, I never would go to my parents and just say, I'm dealing with these stresses at school. I don't want to go. I never said that in all those years. I never said that. But I definitely was very nervous every morning. And I think it probably showed outwardly. If you're a parent, pay attention to your child's body language, but also pay attention to if they are frequently asking not to go to school or saying that they're sick or speaking not fond of school, not in a positive way. Also paying attention to their social connections. Did they have friends before? Now suddenly they're not talking to these friends, or you don't hear them mentioning anything about their friends. These are things to pay attention to that really could be a concern for where you can ask more questions and start delving deeper, as a parent. And so how can you help your child if you feel, or if you already know that this is going on, or you suspect that this is happening? I think one of the big things that can be a really good support is talking to them. Now, what I will say is that when research is done and it looks at adults and the impact that bullying has had on them in their adult life, the difference that can be made is someone who comes from a supportive family and someone who comes from a family that already has some challenging dynamics going on in the house already. Truthfully speaking, the home that I grew up in, there were other dynamics that were going on that already set a tone of me not feeling like being open and speaking about what was going on. But if you're in a family where, in a general sense, you all have had healthy communication in the home, it's been balanced, you want to use this, right? You want to use this and continue this as you see those changes in your child. You want to talk to them. You want to ask them, make a point to pinpoint what you're noticing. Like I'm recognizing that you seem a little nervous before going to school. Is this something you want to talk about? Sometimes having to even go a little bit deeper and point to something directly, because there's something about children often when when we're children, we just don't express or come straight out. We're still developing in our emotions, we're developing in our psychosocial sense, we're developing all of that. And we may have to go the extra mile as a parent to let our children know that it is safe for them to talk to us. I have two children. One of my children, my oldest child, never had any social issues at school, except I would transfer her every year because I was always looking for something better for her. And when she got in 4th grade, I think she told me, I don't want to transfer anymore, which was a good sign. She had found a social group that she really liked and connected with, and she did not want to leave that space. That was a good indication. When my other child, my son, when he transferred in 4th grade, it was a more difficult situation for him. So it's really paying attention also to your children. You can have one child who's dealt with some challenges and flourished and got through it well. You can have another child who, it can be a struggle because our personalities are different, and so when my son transferred to this new school, it was a bit more of a challenge for him. But I knew, just coming from a space where I dealt with, psychosocial issues in my school age years, I talked to him a lot. And it gave him space to talk more. And it gave me space to then create a support around him. And now for him in the long term, because of that support, he really did manage through that change. And it also helped me recognize, that change takes more for him. It takes more to get reacclimated to other people. I will also say with my son, when he was in day camp, there was a camp that he went to where he did have a bad experience socially with some older kids. And I remember for a while, as much as he liked day camp, each year, even though it might be a different day camp, he approached it each year with some anxiety because he wondered if he was going to have that same type of experience. And it could have impacted just his idea of change. So just understanding how often are we changing our children's environment where they have to, get reacquainted with being social and meeting new people. That can be challenging. That really can be challenging, and every child is different. So really taking the time to talk to your child on an individual basis. If you have a home where you have 6 children, every child is different, and every child is not going to navigate through certain things the exact same way, because it's what makes us unique. So keeping that in mind. And really, I want to say this because one thought that a person can have is if your child is being bullied is to keep them going there. It toughens their skin. It causes them to adapt. And I can't say that that's true for everyone. I want you to keep in mind that some children, the bullying becomes a trauma for them that they carry into their adult life. So you really want to gauge your child, see how distressing is this for them, and talk to them and ask them about it. And I would be less concerned about this idea of them running from challenges, because life is going to bring challenges. But you want to also know, are the challenges so difficult that it's going to impact how they view themselves and then how they navigate in the world moving forward. We have a lot of options in terms of changing environments for our children if we know that it will be supportive to them. And how much support do you think your child may feel where they're heard if they are really having some distress and you hear that and you do make changes for them so that they can have an environment where they thrive? Your school or those in social environments where you have to go to every day, if a child is having to go through that under the stress and pressure of being humiliated every day, that can take a toll on their mental health in the long run. Studies show that bullying is a type of experience that can be traumatic for a child. So thinking about other environments, I remember I had a relative who, this is another sign also of someone who is being bullied. I had a relative who was in high school, and they were, when it came time for the report card, it showed that they had been absent from particular classes for a large amount of time that really caused them to not pass that class. And their mom at the time had them homeschooled, and homeschool was a different thing then. It simply meant that emotionally it was too much for the child in the school atmosphere. So the teacher brought the work to them after school, and they did the work, and that's how they navigated through that. But that was what that person needed. And that's not what homeschool looks like now, but I do want to say that homeschool is an option for giving your child some space, a break to be able to focus, to be able to learn. It's hard for a child to learn if they're in very stressful environments like that. And then also figuring out other ways that you can develop their social abilities. You can still have them in community sports or activities where they can have some time with their social, but the bulk of their learning could be a homeschool environment. And if you think that you're someone who can't homeschool, I just want to say, I've had a lot of people who I've known who homeschool, and it may take 3 hours to get all of the content that you would get in a school day when you're just doing it one-on-one with your child. There are a lot of resources for that. So I would just say not being closed to that, but navigating and talking with your child about what they feel would be helpful. Asking them, like, what would be helpful for you? What do you think would be better for you? And I think I have one more point because I'm sharing my notes. It would be showing support. It would be that. Again, a lot of times children, no matter what the abuse that they may be going through is, oftentimes children don't come out straightforward and say what is bothering or troubling them. So really, as a parent, showing extra concern to the degree that you ask the questions, you delve a little deeper in a safe way. They'll help them know that they're safe to talk to you. Children will open up, when you talk to them more, but understanding support, if it's your family support, if it's you and your family, especially if you have a supportive family. Again, studies show that a child that comes from a home that has more support, their outcomes are better, and you navigate these things together. So let me know in the comments if this was helpful for you. Let me know if you have a child who you sometimes have concerns about in terms of how they're doing socially in their social environments. I would like for you to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel if you feel like this content is helpful. Share this with someone who might benefit, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.